Amin.
Okay, fantastic having everybody back on MGD. And Ayush, where are you?
I'm here.
Say hello.
Hi.
Okay, so it's great to do this with. Ayush, because we've had the good fortune of staying friends for all these years. Of course, we met at NID, and I think at some point we bumped into each other on the street and just decided to see if we could collaborate. And you always say that to folks that, hey, let's do something together, but you never actually get around to doing it. And with Ayush, it was different. At some point, we decided to actually get together and do projects, and it's been great fun. So before I start, a quick memory of Vikas, because we've just got out of that memorial service a few seconds back. Actually, it just got shut off, and I think we can start by. So I was just saying that we just got off the memorial service for Vikas, and I don't know if everybody here was a part of the institute when he was around, but I think it was great having a designer as a director. NIT has been run by all sorts of people. It's been run by founders. It's been run by, some of you might know, by a retired admiral of the Navy, Admiral Soman. It's been run by, stalwarts like AC, and then we had Vinay Jha, who was a bureaucrat. And just after Vinay Jha, we had Vikas. So I think it was probably the first time that NID was run by a graduate of the institute. And if I remember correctly, probably the last time. Because after that, again, you've had all sorts of people who weren't actually educated at NID. So he was probably the one who was single-handedly responsible for educating all of us in a specific way. So a lot of the stuff that we do is also because there was an ecosystem that allowed us to be like this. I think that's a very special thing that all of us carry with us. And we are fortunate that a bit of it is still around, but sometimes it fluctuates and it probably isn't always the same. And we are a bit old now, so when we go back, it was always the good old days. So on that slightly somber note, we can now sort of change gears a little bit. So back to Ayush. So Ayush, we can start right off a little bit of a chat. I know from my conversations with you that you had some experience of living abroad in your early years. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that? Because I know the details are sketchy, maybe somewhere in Africa and so on. We've had little chats about it, but I think nobody knows the full story.
So I was born in Jaipur, but when I was 4 years old, my parents decided to move to Africa, to this country called Ghana, and they chose this remote village in northern Ghana, Bolgatanga. And my dad was the head of the hospital out there. I was the only brownie out there. And it was really difficult because whenever I went, I had to go use the loo. Everybody would want to come and see what a brownie baby looks like. So it was really, really embarrassing. And I spent 4 years out there, pretty much didn't learn anything. It was 4 years of chasing cats, growing rabbits in the backyard, growing, all sorts of things. And also sitting by the watchman who'd come with grass in the night, and by morning he'd have a basket with him. And I think that to me was very formative, because the magic of seeing something made with in front of you is a kick that I still enjoy. I don't have the patience to go through long processes, but that kick was from Africa. My parents sent me back to hostel because I was kind of becoming a good for nothing. And they sent me to boarding school in Indore. That's my Nanihal. So I was in boarding for a few years, but Ghana kind of stayed with me, and even now I have very strong memories of that place. It was really.
Did you ever go back?
And I used to go back, on the vacations because my parents were still there. Yeah, and it was so remote that to get basic vegetables, we had to go to another country to get, like, there was no tomatoes. The only veggies you would get was yam, plantain, cassava, okra, and brinjal in season, no milk. So yeah, that was what it was like.
So, once you got back from Africa, I think you were intermittently in and out of Africa, the way I see it.
Yeah.
So where was this? So, I mean, obviously, when I met you first, I don't think I ragged you ever, but probably we met in the workshop or something. It was quite clear that you were pretty hands-on. And I remember even in your first year, you used to make little things and carry them around and show them to everybody, which was a nice thing. So everybody knew what Ayush was doing right from the beginning. But where did that spark begin? I mean, when did you realize that you were a little different, or there was something that you would like to do with yourself that was creative? I mean, how did that transition happen? All of us have that transition moment. And what was yours?
So, remember Samir Beaton?
Yeah.
So Samir used to swim in the same sort of small, very small pool that I would go to.
He now swims in very big pools. He swims in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
I heard he was swimming around New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Coming back to your swimming pool.
So Samir was the first person who told me about this place called NID. And he told me that the exams happen sometime in November, December. And, I was kind of strategic about giving it because that will come right in the middle of the pre-boards, which I hated. So I gave the NID exam to get out of the pre-boards. A whole gang of us went from Jaipur. We gave the exam, came back. I had no idea ki kuch hoega ki nahi hoega. And then I got the entrance call. I wanted to appear only for architecture, and this is kind of something which I was very clear about, that I wanted to make things. My dad's a doctor, mom's a school teacher. There was a big pressure on becoming a doctor, but my sister had done that bit, so I was kind of free to do whatever I wanted.
So my question was a little different. I mean, that was probably by the time you were old enough to know that there was something like NID, and probably were fortunate to meet Beaton. But while you were a school kid, was there something that, I mean, did you do all the designer things like draw and paint, or was it a different journey for you?
There was this art teacher in Delhi College, Mrs. Chauhan. Hey, just a second, there's something off happening. Huh? I might get shut off and I'll come back on. Sorry, there's something off with the computer. So there was this art teacher called Mrs. Chauhan, and I would draw and paint, but I was not frightfully good at it. But I wanted to be good at it, so I try all sorts of things. And she made me make paper models. So I made paper models of boats, really, really bad. And I went to a friend's house whose dad was an architect, and I saw the models and I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And I somehow learned the word architect. So in 1984, somebody would ask this gawky little, 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid, what you want to do? And I'd somehow pronounce architect. And then they'd ask me, what do they do? And I say, oh, chote model banate hain. And that was kind of the start of it. And then this word got stuck, and I kind of continued with it. But you mentioned the thing about making stuff and always being involved in doing things. So I was from Jaipur, boys' school, very awkward, with myself, and NID was a different planet. The first person I saw, my family saw with me when they came to NID was Rebani in her orange kurta, Rudraksh mala, big round glasses, hair like that, sitting at the gate with tiny shorts. And, I freaked out. So did my parents, and my mom and sister were there, and they were ready to walk back with me. The second person they saw was Vaidi. So that was like the name. Somehow I managed to stay. But, in the first few years, I was awkward, with myself, with the place. And my kind of delving into stuff and making things was actually my way of getting around this awkwardness. I didn't make it apparent, I think, But I found a lot of fun in dealing with product or with stuff, with materials, because they kind of speak back to me. And I'd fill in every waking moment with something to do. I know a lot of people come from smaller towns and kind of go through a similar experience, but I am kind of like a shy-ish kind of a person. So that was kind of
Not anymore.
no, not anymore. I kind of got around it now.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
So, one thing which I'd like to share is that, like I said, we would have these brief encounters, bump into Ayush here and there, speak to each other on the phone. This was very long back, and we kind of thought it would be fun to work on something together. The reason why we actually ended up working together was that, Ayush had this store which had the most beautiful things. It was like a treasure trove. And I would never get out of that store without actually picking something up. And I've actually been forbidden from being in that store ever again because my whole house is stuffed with this, beautiful things. But the reason why we started doing stuff together was that he was always up for a challenge. And it's a great feeling to work on a crazy project with somebody just like you, who's from your sort of it's like a community we come from, and to be able to understand exactly what the standards are. We all work in the real world with people who don't understand what is the standard of design that you really want to achieve. And if you have somebody who's like a spirit who understands exactly where you are coming from design, thinking up stuff and making stuff, you can only push it as far as the folks who can make it. You can keep coming up with crazy stuff, but in Ayush I found somebody who was willing to take a challenge. And I think all the projects we worked on together have been completely outlandish things, even outlandish from our own standpoint. Even we don't do those things unless Ayush joins the club. So, and they are sometimes outlandish in terms of creativity, they're outlandish in terms of execution. Making something in Jaipur and sending it to the US like a gigantic puzzle, basically doing stuff which nobody else does. So I've always found that if you have to really do something totally crazy, you have to basically get Ayush interested, and you'll end up doing something. So Ayush, how do you kind of find the, let's say, motivation to do these outlandish things? It's a bit of a jump off a cliff kind of moment every time we get together. So how do you get motivated? I mean, I have my reasons. What's yours?
It's just kind of stretching myself. I kind of get very bored doing what I've done already. And for me, the hallmark of wanting to do any project is whether I'm going to learn something from it. If not, then I'm really not going to waste my time. I'm kind of upfront with a lot of clients and say that I'm not interested in doing a project because I won't learn anything from it. Even if they pay me a lot of money or whatever, it's just not interesting. I can't waste my time. But with you, I've always found things that have stretched me, in many ways to kind of approach something without knowing what it's going to be, what the end result is going to be. And I really enjoy that aspect of design when you start off without knowing where the idea is going to take you.
So, this is something that, I mean, this is a lot of us already know about this stuff. But, whenever when we joined NID, they would always talk a lot about tolerance for ambiguity. And I mean, I love that statement. And that's basically doing stuff without knowing what the end product's going to look like. And unfortunately, the real world doesn't understand that a lot. They always want to know where they're going. And
Yeah.
if you can't define things right in the beginning, you don't even know how to start. And sometimes it's crazy, you've got to cost out things that you don't know what they're going to be like. So
Yeah.
it can be as tactical at that. So the moment I think of cost, also I think of Ayush, because he is one of the sharpest businessmen I know. I mean, he's got it in spades. And I don't know what is it the Kasliwal DNA, or is it Jaipur, or is it just you, or is it your wife? Because all of these are actually contributing to this really sharp business. His wife is even sharper than he is. I cannot even deal with.
Oh, yeah, she's super sharp.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So I want to know a little bit about how a really creative design guy becomes a good businessman. I think that's a question a lot of us really want to know.
It's actually fairly simple. If I need to do something, I need to have something. It's just something that it's the business is out of the need to be able to do things that I want to do. It's not a challenge. It's not a big deal. It's just very simply organizing yourself, knowing that money comes in, money goes out. It's rock basic. There's nothing complicated to it. But there's a lot of human aspects about it that also, like, how do you negotiate? When do you say yes, and when do you say no? I will not go beyond that. Being willing to stand out there and take the risk and the chance. When we did that project for the airport, the Mudra project, it was sheer guts. I had, I think, about 8 lakh rupees in my account at that time. The project value in the beginning was 4 crores when we started off. I said yes. And I think it is this ability to take the risk and the chance and the confidence in being able to do it. And that is where the business gets organized. Because if the business is not organized, I cannot take that chance. So for me, that is why a business happens. It's not a big deal. I don't think it has anything to do with the Kaskiwal or the wife or whatever. It's just that you need to organize your bases, kind of thing.
I was just joking. He's got really serious. Yeah, what's this guy? Yeah? Don't ever negotiate with Ayush. Okay, I'm just telling you in advance. Don't ever negotiate with this guy. He's dangerous. He just looks like the sweet little kid. He's like sharp as nails. You saw that little bit coming out right in the end of the previous phrase. So I think now everybody is really excited about what you actually do. So I think it's time to show us some pictures.
So I kind of hurriedly put together. I had a client who called me earlier today saying that I had to finish a project today, which meant designing about 36 products, drawing, drafting, complete presentations out in a day. So I've just come back from that. So I put together.
I'm sure you're exaggerating, but we'll give it to you.
No, I'm not exaggerating. So it's a easy kind of a presentation. I'll just share it with you now, and then oops, where is it? Yep. So finally, so I started the company with this thought that if I can put my name behind it, only then should I make it. Something that I'm proud of. And there is old shops in the old city, Moolchand, Radhe Lal, Umaraumal. And I kind of felt very inspired that, if somebody is willing to put their name behind what they do is when they're really confident about it. So I started off with AKFT, which is Ayush Kastiwal Furniture Design. And the other enterprise we have is Anantaya, which is my 2 daughters, Ananya and Tanaya. There's a third one that came after that, so we have to still figure that part out.
You have to start a third company.
Yeah, I have to figure that out. I'm just waiting for her to start asking. She's 7 now, so I think she'll be asking soon. So I come from a Jain background, and I think somehow our beliefs form the basis of what we do. Ahimsa, Ekantvad, and Aparigraha are 3 things which I personally hold very important to whatever I do. Ahimsa is non-violence. Anikantvad is non-singularity, that there is every other opinion is also true. There are multiple realities for all of us. And Aparigraha is non-attachment to whatever we do. And somehow it kind of reflects in many ways in what I work on. The materiality of things is critical. So in this case, I'll just give you a few examples of what I'm doing. It's not in a chronological order. It's not in any logical order, but just sort of a framework. These are palm leaves, which are individually stitched together to make shapes. This was a chair I was working on for a long time, and it's made in this village called Geejgarh, which is about 2 hours from Jaipur. It's made by a community of women. And I wanted to make something that was not a basket, because there's only so much money that a basket can give them. So I wanted a larger piece. So I made this after some time. And fortunately, companies in the US and in Australia, they picked it up. And then we had to produce a lot of them. But this process does not lend itself to many. So at this time, I started working, I told them that I can only produce 20 in a month. That's all I could produce. And we produced this for a good 5 years since then. So this is when the material itself is affected, the shape, the form, and the timelines, and the product. So the upper shell is the only thing, and they come back stacked in Maruti van. So it's a very easy thing to take on. This was one of the first projects I did after I left NID. This was in a village called Sultana, where they used to make wire cages for birds, like something like what you see on the right. This I was doing for the government, but the idea was to make products which take the idea to another level and inspire the artisans to do more. The end of this project was actually a catalog that we made and we gave to all the artisans, along with a list of exporters who they could go and show these products to and take orders, because when I did this, I was like a no one. I could not buy even the samples that I made. The artisans fortunately had the entrepreneurship to take the catalogs to a lot of exporters, get orders on what I had designed, but also show their capability where the exporters, buyers design products for them to make. And this spawned a whole industry of makers. And when I started, there were about, I think, 60 people doing it. Currently, there are about 800 people who are involved in this trade, and they're thriving. So it's kind of a very exciting project for me. These are tables which are, I think, Amit, you have some of these also, right? Amit, okay, so these are small.
Yeah, I've got two of these. I really love these.
These are small round tables which we make in mango wood, and we paint over them. We get the miniature painters to paint these, and these are all fragments of old miniature paintings, which in a way remind them of who they are, where they are from, but it's a new product. We managed to kind of get the colors, the finish, everything sorted out to make it really nice, but it allows us to tell the story of the makers and the paint. And when we have paint, we use it in a way that paint works best. On the left is, those are planters made out of rubber tires. There are mountains of rubber tires, outside most of our cities. So we were just sort of exploring what to do, and I'd seen these tagaris and things that people use on construction sites, and we made these tires, and the shape somehow has these sort of really beautiful organic, organicity about it. So they almost feel like terracotta, like blackened terracotta. And on the right is are things that we made with the tazia makers. I don't know, has anybody seen a tazia procession ever? Sajid, have you seen one? So in Jaipur, there's this old man, Azimuddin. He's a tazia making master. So tazias are made for 3 months between Eid and Muharram. And it was really beautiful because these guys, they make these huge, massive tazias, which are like, 30 feet tall. They take it out in processions, and at the end of the procession, they break it and they bury it in the Karbala. And seeing the amount of work that goes in, because the entire community, the colonies get together, they have a competition. So I asked Azimuddin, आपको कैसा लगता है कि इतना मेहनत किया है, इतने लोगों ने इतने दिन तक काम किया है, तो तोड़ के हम दफना देते हैं. And he said something very beautiful. He said, हमको मिल गया जो हमको चाहिए था, भाईचारा. And that was really, really eloquent, because a lot of things that we have around us, they don't mean anything except what they mean. In themselves, they're nothing. So that was kind of how I started off with the tazias. And what I try and do with the products is give Azimuddin and his family work in the remaining 9 months. So we make lamps, we make all sorts of things. We also use his work in my sister-in-law's wedding, where he made these huge, the mandap and all that was made by Azimuddin. And there's another event that we'll come to later where we used what he does. We kind of, I think once we start off on working with materials, there really is no end. So this is, we did this line of zero waste garments, where we designed the garment and wove it such that it comes off the loom, and with a few stitches becomes a garment. And we don't waste any fabric whatsoever. So they're all made out of the same warp of fabric. These are made in Bhuj by some of the people that we've been working with. So, by this, I've got a pretty decently successful export business, and I have these clients in the US who buy, woven bed covers by the mile, literally, which I work with these guys for. Now, memory is another thing which kind of comes back to us. So, do you see these images on the left? These big cushion covers. We call this the Amar Chitrakatha range, and these are all woven dharis. And the idea is that the Amar Chitrakatha is no longer, it's not really a comic. It's a cultural icon because a lot of us have learned our history through that. And I think that is really what we need to accord to it. So these cushion covers, we tried for a long time to come into a partnership with them where we have a royalty, whatever structure, but they're kind of slightly difficult to work with. So these were made as prototypes, but they're really, really beautiful things. And because they're woven, they're same on both sides, but the weaving is incredible. On the right is again one of the very initial products. It's called the Gada Salt Shaker, and it kind of derives from a couple of different thoughts. The Gada is a uniquely Indian, instrument of fighting. And also salt is one of the very unique things that India has in terms of its freedom struggle, when the Salt March, the Dandi March. So kind of putting these two things together, there's also tears of salt. So these two eyes are there. Also, have you noticed very often when we buy, we get the salt shaker and pepper thing together, but hardly any of us actually use the pepper, thing, except when we're having, pasta or something. So because it's on a stick and you kind of rattle it down, you can put it along with your spoons and forks. So you just have one thing to put onto the table. So kind of like a very practical way of using it. And because it is wood, you can kind of bang it on the table to get the salt to dislodge, unlike a ceramic or glass one. Kriti, do you remember this? So this is the piano at the end is what Kriti had worked on. And this is a place it's called the Narendra Bhavan. It's a project we designed in Bikaner. This was the house of the last ruler of Bikaner, Narendra Singh Ji. And the house previously was very nondescript, one story with basement, concrete monstrosity. My client, they had bought this place from Narendra Singh Ji, and they wanted to make it a hospital. So they started building a hospital. They come up one floor and they realize the hospital will not work because they cannot run it. At that time, there was the refinery and all that was going to happen in Bikaner. So they said, we should have a business hotel. So they started building a business hotel after that. And then the refinery moved away. So they were kind of left high and dry. That is when they got me in. So Karan Singh, and Amit, do you remember you introduced me to him?
Yeah, I remember Karan.
So Karan is the one who got me into this project.
Right. And yeah, we spoke to each other before the whole thing started, so I know about this. Yeah.
So the entire project, and I've shared the presentation with you, was about figments of imagination around the memory of what a person might have been. He himself was extremely dark and colorless, but we thought, why not imagine a place? So this is kind of like a biography in space, and that is where Kriti also came in, and she wrote the song that he might have sung or played on the piano in his old age. This is another project we did in Delhi. It's for a jeweler, for a Jaipur-based jeweler. It was a tiny, place that we got. So we imagined the house of what Maharani Gayatri Devi might have, lived like, or what her pied à terre in Paris might have been like. Interestingly, we sometimes test our clients to know how far they go. And in this case, I said, I want to start off with something which I need to have the confidence the client will invest.